Hey everyone, welcome to Life Reflections. Today I'm sharing a life story that might just hit home for you. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button to join me for more moments that matter. Let's dive in.
Emma stood in front of the full-length mirror inside the elevator, smoothing down the collar of her blazer and quickly fixing the stray strands of hair that threatened to escape from her sleek updo. The soft hum of the elevator's gears was the only sound as she glanced at herself, silently taking in the reflection of the woman she had become. She had worked tirelessly for this moment. Today wasn't just another day at the office, it was the day. As the numbers on the control panel ticked up one by one, 19, 20, 21, each floor she passed brought her closer to the culmination of her 7-year journey at the top tech company in Silicon Valley. Emma Wells, Senior Marketing Director. It sounded surreal even to her. A position she had fought for, sacrificed for, and dedicated herself to in ways she hadn't imagined when she first set foot in the building at the age of 25. At 32, she had everything she ever wanted, the corner office with a panoramic view of the Golden Gate Bridge, a paycheck that exceeded her expectations, and a marriage she had once believed was invincible. She had worked hard to get here, not just for the prestige or the title, but because she truly believed she deserved it. The elevator doors slid open to a burst of applause. Her colleagues, who had been waiting for her, were all smiles and energy. Congratulations poured in from all directions. She smiled, her heart racing with the exhilaration of this moment. This is it, Emma. This is your moment. You earned this, she thought, trying to soak it all in. But as she stepped out of the elevator and walked into the office lobby, something subtle, yet undeniable, shifted in her gut. It was a feeling she couldn't ignore. The familiar congratulations didn't have the same warmth they usually did. The smiles were there, but they felt distant. The world around her felt too perfect, too polished, and yet, something about it all felt hollow. Emma couldn't help but feel as if there was something lurking just beyond the surface, waiting to be uncovered. Her assistant, Ava, approached her with a stack of documents, her eyes glinting with something Emma couldn't place. The proposal for the next quarter's campaign is ready, Ava said, then paused, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. Oh, by the way, have you met Claire Turner? The new legal consultant? Emma's brow furrowed slightly. Claire Turner? She hadn't been keeping up with the gossip, too busy, too focused on her own ascent in the company. Ava continued, she's beautiful. And she's very sharp. Beautiful. The word lingered in the air, but Emma didn't react. She nodded faintly, giving her assistant a small smile. It was a compliment, nothing more. But why did it sound like something more? Why did it feel like Ava was hinting at something Emma wasn't ready to acknowledge? As Ava walked away, the tightness in Emma's chest grew. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. It's just nerves. You've worked for years to get here. Today is about you. Enjoy it. But that nagging feeling, the one she had ignored for so long, refused to fade. She entered her office after the morning meeting, the soft autumn sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across her desk. The promotion certificate was newly framed on the wall, a reminder of how far she'd come. And yet, as she sat in her chair, staring at the certificate, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had worked for was slipping away from her, inch by inch. Maybe it's just stress, Emma tried to reason with herself. She'd been working late, pushing through back-to-back meetings, all while keeping up with the constant pressure that came with a promotion this big. But something didn't sit right. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she knew one thing for sure, something in her life, something deep and fundamental, had shifted. Ryan, her husband, had always been her anchor. He was the calm in her storm, the person she relied on when the world around her got too loud. But lately, their connection had felt different. It wasn't that he was being overtly distant, but there was an invisible wall between them that she couldn't explain. He used to text her during the day, telling her how proud he was of her, reminding her of their shared dreams and aspirations. But today, there was nothing. No message. No good luck today, Em. I know you've got this. Emma thought back to the morning. He had kissed her goodbye, just as he always did, his cologne lingering on her shoulder as he whispered how proud he was of her. But that was before the elevator doors opened, before the applause and the congratulations. In the whirlwind of celebration, she had pushed the feeling aside. But now, as she sat alone in her office, it came rushing back. What if I'm just being paranoid? She wondered. But the doubt kept creeping in, gnawing at her, eating away at her calm exterior. There had been small signs, little inconsistencies. It started with the way Ryan had been acting distant lately, withdrawing when she asked about his day or his new project. It wasn't that he was actively shutting her out, but his responses were clipped. No longer did he sit with her at dinner and talk for hours about their work or their future. Now, it felt like he was distracted, his mind elsewhere. His phone, which he used to leave lying around for her to check whenever she needed to, was now glued to his hand, always face down on the table. It was these small shifts, these little moments that Emma couldn't ignore. They were like a symphony of signs playing in the background, too faint to fully hear but loud enough to make her question everything she thought she knew. The promotion was supposed to be the pinnacle of her success. She should have felt elated, her heart soaring with pride. And yet, all she could feel was this gnawing emptiness. Is this what success feels like? She wondered. As she sat back in her chair, staring at the framed certificate on the wall, Emma couldn't help but think about the last few months, about Ryan's constant excuses, the late-night meetings, the increasing distance between them. She had trusted him implicitly, but now, as the shadows grew longer and the city hummed with life below, Emma began to question if that trust was misplaced. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. Proud of you, babe. Let's celebrate tonight. But the words felt empty, disconnected, like they had been written by someone else. Was he really proud of me? Or was he just saying it because that's what he was supposed to say? The feeling in Emma's chest twisted. The doubt she had buried deep inside her now began to surface, impossible to ignore. She couldn't just keep brushing them aside. Something is wrong. Something is changing, she thought. But what, exactly, was it? And just like that, Emma knew. She couldn't just wait for the answers to come to her. She had to find them herself. Something wasn't right in her marriage. She had worked so hard to get here, this far, but now, she realized she might have been fighting the wrong battle all along. The days that followed Emma's promotion felt surreal. She had achieved everything she set out to accomplish, yet the euphoria of success, the long hours and sacrifices that had led to this moment, felt hollow. It wasn't just the weight of the new responsibilities that was getting to her, it was the growing distance between her and Ryan. The man she had married, the one she had always looked to for support, seemed like a shadow of himself. It wasn't immediately obvious. In fact, to the casual observer, everything appeared perfectly fine. Ryan still kissed her good morning, still left texts of encouragement, and still attended their social events together. But to Emma, who had always prided herself on being attuned to the smallest of shifts, the cracks were starting to show. At first, it was little things, small, almost imperceptible changes that she could easily justify as work stress or the fatigue that came with her demanding role. Ryan would come home late more often, and when he did, he seemed distracted. There was the occasional shrug when she asked about his day, the empty comments when she tried to engage him in conversation about their future. His phone, once casually left on the counter or in his bag, now seemed to be a constant presence in his hand. It wasn't that he was overtly secretive, it was just that there was a new air of ownership over it, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. When Emma noticed that he was always careful to place the phone face down on the kitchen counter or the coffee table, a sense of unease bloomed within her. She hadn't thought much of it at first. After all, Ryan had always been private about his work, especially when dealing with sensitive cases. But the more she watched him, the more she couldn't shake the feeling that his defensiveness wasn't about work at all. One night, they had dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant that they used to frequent when they were newlyweds. Emma chose the restaurant, hoping it would bring back some of the warmth and familiarity they had shared early in their marriage. But as soon as Ryan walked in, she could feel the distance between them, palpable like a thick fog settling over their table. He was late, nearly 30 minutes, and when he arrived, his shirt was wrinkled, and his tie was loosened, as though he'd rushed in from somewhere else. Emma kept her smile in place as they sat down, trying to mask the unease that was creeping up on her. They ordered, and the conversation, once flowing easily, now felt forced. Emma talked about work, about the campaign she had just launched, but Ryan barely engaged. His responses were short, distracted. When Emma asked him about a new project he was involved in at the firm, he gave a non-committal shrug. "The new partner is a tough one," he said. "We've got a lot to do." Emma nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She needed more than just a half-hearted conversation. She wanted to feel connected, to feel like they were still in sync, like they were still a team. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that what she had been sensing for weeks now wasn't just the strain of his work schedule. It was something deeper. Something else. "Have you been working with Claire Turner much?" Emma asked casually, her tone light, trying not to sound like she was prying. Ryan froze. Just for a moment, just a flicker of hesitation, but it was enough. His gaze shifted, and a slight frown creased his forehead. "Yeah," he said slowly, his voice quieter now. "She's handling some of the documents for the Chicago project." "Nothing major." Emma nodded, pretending not to notice his unease. But Ava's words came back to her, the mention of Claire being very beautiful. Emma told herself it didn't matter, that Claire was just another colleague, but the more she thought about it, the more her instincts screamed at her to dig deeper. Over the next few days, her gut feelings grew stronger. She found herself replaying conversations in her head, trying to make sense of the small inconsistencies. Why had Ryan become so protective of his phone? Why was he avoiding her gaze more often? Why had he become so emotionally distant, as if something, someone, was pulling his attention away? The questions piled up, each one making her more unsettled. But Emma kept pushing them aside, convincing herself it was just the stress of her promotion. She didn't want to be one of those women, paranoid and suspicious, seeing betrayal where there was none. But even as she tried to silence those nagging doubts, her intuition told her the opposite. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just in the quiet moments at home, either. At work, things had changed too. Ryan had stopped calling her during the day, the way he used to when he was working late. Their nightly phone calls had become brief texts, "Still at the office, go ahead and sleep." The communication that had once been the foundation of their relationship now felt mechanical, routine. And Emma couldn't help but feel the absence of what once was. She noticed it during meetings, too. The way Ryan's attention seemed to wander when she spoke, as if he wasn't really listening. The way he would look at his phone during lunch, never meeting her gaze. There were days when Emma found herself talking to him, but his responses fell off, disconnected from the man she once knew so well. It was like he was no longer present with her, not in the way he used to be. She had to admit it to herself. The man she had married, the man she had trusted, was changing. And the more Emma thought about it, the more she started to connect the dots. The cancelled dinners, the late nights at the office, the phone guarded like a precious artifact, it all pointed to something she wasn't ready to face. But she could feel it now, in her gut, in the silence between them, in the way the air had shifted. Ryan was hiding something from her. As she sat in her office one evening, alone with her thoughts, Emma stared out of the window, watching the city lights twinkle below. Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, but it wasn't the reflection of the woman who had just been promoted. It was the reflection of someone caught between two worlds, the success she had worked so hard for, and the unsettling reality of a marriage that seemed to be unraveling before her eyes. What if I'm wrong? She asked herself, trying to quiet the storm of doubt in her chest. But deep down, she knew. Her instincts weren't lying to her. It was time to face the truth. The air was crisp, and the sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows over the office building as Emma walked back to her car after a grueling day of meetings. She had just wrapped up a strategy session with her team, discussing the next big campaign launch, but her mind couldn't stay focused on work. The thoughts of Ryan and his strange behavior had clouded her every thought, gnawing at her relentlessly. She hadn't intended to stay late, but something urged her to keep pushing through, as if she could bury the growing anxiety by working harder. She packed up her things and headed out of the office, but as she walked through the building's lobby, she heard laughter. Low and pleasant. She paused, her steps slowing as she scanned the room. There, near the coffee station, was Ryan. He stood with Claire Turner, laughing at something she had just said. Claire's laugh was bright, almost too loud for the quiet office. It was a laugh that felt too intimate, too familiar for a professional setting. Emma's heart dropped as she watched them. Ryan's posture was relaxed, his arm leaning casually against the coffee counter, while Claire stood too close, her hand resting lightly on his arm. In that moment, Emma's breath hitched. A cold rush of realization washed over her. The woman she had heard so much about, the one whose beauty had been discussed behind her back, was standing there, with Ryan, in a way that spoke volumes. It wasn't just a professional exchange. No. This was something more. This was personal. Emma didn't know how long she stood there, frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to look away, but her feet were rooted to the floor. The laughter echoed in her ears as the world around her seemed to fade into a dull hum. Ryan leaned in, his face inches from Claire's as they exchanged a quiet conversation, his eyes soft, warm even. That look. That soft, affectionate gaze. Emma had seen it before. In the early days of their marriage. When they would sit on the couch, talking for hours, their connection so deep it felt like nothing could ever sever it. But now, standing in the lobby, she saw it on Ryan's face, and it was not for her. It was for Claire. The emotional shift was palpable. Emma's hands clenched into fists at her sides, her mind racing, trying to piece together the flood of emotions crashing over her. Is this really happening? She felt like she was drowning, submerged in the betrayal that had been building for weeks, if not months. But seeing it, witnessing it with her own eyes, made it all real in a way nothing else could. Ryan and Claire, standing so close, so familiar, in front of everyone else. It was a betrayal of the highest order. Not just an affair, but a betrayal of everything Emma thought she knew, about her marriage, about Ryan, about herself. All the signs she had ignored, all the tiny, subtle changes that had seemed insignificant, suddenly clicked into place. Ryan's coldness, his defensiveness, the late nights, the guarded phone, he wasn't just busy with work. He had been slipping away from her, from their marriage, into something new, something she wasn't part of. She turned away slowly, her steps unsteady as she made her way out of the lobby and into the parking garage. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the weight of her realization was physically dragging her down. Her mind screamed for her to turn back, to confront Ryan and Claire right then and there, to demand the truth. But she knew she couldn't do that, not yet. The last thing she wanted was to make herself vulnerable in front of them. She had spent so many years building her career, her life, her image, and now, it felt like everything was unraveling in an instant. Emma reached her car, the world spinning around her. She wanted to cry, to scream, but her body felt paralyzed. The tears wouldn't come, not yet. She needed clarity. She needed to process what she had just seen. She sat in the car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, her hands gripping it tightly. This wasn't just about a mistake, she realized. This wasn't just a misstep, a fleeting moment of weakness. This was the beginning of the end. She replayed the moments in her head, the way Ryan looked at Claire, the ease with which they interacted, the familiarity that stung her like 1,000 needles. And just like that, everything Emma had believed in, everything she had fought for, felt like it had been shattered in a single moment. But one thing was certain, she wasn't going to let this define her. Not now, not ever. She had worked too hard to build her life, her career, her identity. She would not let a man, no matter how much she loved him, tear it all down. Emma took a deep breath, the weight of the realization pressing on her chest. It's time to face the truth, she thought. It's time to stop pretending. And with that thought, she started the car and drove away, the hum of the engine a stark contrast to the chaos spinning in her mind. Emma knew the road ahead would be long and painful, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of clarity. A sense of purpose. She wasn't going to fight for a marriage that was already dead. She was going to fight for herself, for the woman she was becoming. The world might think Emma's perfect marriage was crumbling, but in that moment, she made a vow to herself. It wasn't just her marriage that was ending, it was the version of her life she had built around that lie. And now, it was time for the truth to take center stage. The days that followed were a blur of unease and growing tension. Emma couldn't shake the image of Ryan and Claire together in the lobby, their laughter still ringing in her ears. She told herself it was just a moment, that maybe she was reading too much into it. But deep down, she knew the truth had already revealed itself, and now she had to face it. Her heart ached with each passing day, the pain of betrayal slowly transforming into a sharp, calculated anger. She tried to focus on her work, pouring herself into her campaigns, her meetings, her team, but every quiet moment was haunted by the thought of Ryan's growing closeness with Claire. The more she tried to push it aside, the more the suspicion gnawed at her. She needed to know the truth. And not the half-truths that Ryan might offer in a casual conversation, but the kind of truth that couldn't be hidden behind a smile or an excuse. Emma needed undeniable evidence, the kind that would silence any doubts and leave no room for denial. It was late on a Thursday night when Emma decided it was time. She hadn't planned on it, but something inside her told her that this was the moment. She had avoided going through Ryan's things, respecting his privacy, but now, the idea of blindly trusting him felt like a dangerous mistake. She walked into the living room, her mind set. Ryan's phone sat on the coffee table, unattended for the first time in days. It was face down, just as it always was. Emma's pulse quickened. She knew this could be the moment of truth, the moment that either confirmed her worst fears or set them to rest once and for all. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the phone. For a brief moment, she hesitated. Was this crossing a line? Would she regret it? But then, the realization hit her, she had already crossed that line the moment Ryan's behavior had shifted. The man she had loved, the man who had always stood by her, was slipping away. The truth was something she deserved to know, whether she liked it or not. With a deep breath, she unlocked the phone. It was surprisingly easy, and for a moment, she felt a pang of guilt. But she quickly pushed it aside, her emotions no longer had the luxury of clouding her judgment. This was about clarity. This was about control. The first message she saw was from Claire. It was a simple, innocuous text at first glance, but it made Emma's stomach twist. Are you free tonight? I can't stop thinking about you. Her eyes scanned the screen, and her heart sank as she read the following exchanges. The messages between Claire and Ryan grew increasingly personal, and the tone shifted from professional to something far more intimate. They talked about late-night meetings that ended a bit too late and how much they missed each other. There were playful comments, flirtations, and then, undeniable proof, photos of Claire, images of her in Ryan's shirt, shots of them in a hotel room, their faces lit up with the kind of intimacy that could no longer be passed off as work-related. This can't be happening, Emma thought, her hands beginning to shake as she scrolled through more messages. Ryan had never been overtly secretive about his phone, but now, as Emma read through the texts, she realized just how much he had been hiding. There were more photos. More messages. Claire had sent a picture of herself in a red dress, her lips painted in the kind of shade that spoke of seduction. Ryan's response was a simple, "You look stunning." The rest of the message thread showed a pattern, flirty, casual exchanges that were followed by increasingly intimate and personal conversations. What began as light banter about work had morphed into something Emma could no longer deny. But the worst part was the last string of texts. The ones that sealed everything. Ryan had sent a message late one night, one that stung harder than anything else. I hate that we can't be together right now, but I'll make it work. I promise. I hate that we can't be together right now. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. There it was, the confirmation that the bond between Ryan and Claire wasn't just flirtation. It was real. And it had been going on for long enough to mean something serious. Emma stared at the phone screen for a long moment, her mind racing. She wasn't sure when the tears started, but they came, slowly at first, and then in waves, each one harder to swallow than the last. She had always prided herself on being strong, resilient, and focused. She had built everything she had from the ground up, and now, this? Her heart shattered, but something inside her hardened. She had spent too many years building her career, her identity, her life, to let this break her. She wasn't going to fall apart, not this time. She wasn't going to let Ryan, or Claire, have the satisfaction of seeing her lose control. Emma closed the phone and set it back on the table, her hands steady now. There would be no tears, no emotional outbursts. This was no longer about betrayal. This was about taking control, about taking back the life that had been stolen from her. She wasn't going to confront Ryan right away. No, this required a strategy. She needed to do this right. If she confronted him now, if she allowed her emotions to dictate her actions, everything would be ruined. She needed to outsmart him. To flip the script on the situation that he had put her in. And so, Emma began to plan. She pulled out her laptop and opened a new document. Step 1, collect evidence. The texts, the photos, everything she could find. It would all go into a secure folder, ready to be used. Step 2, legal counsel. She had already made a mental note of her friend Lisa's advice, and now, more than ever, it felt like the right move. Emma needed to consult with a divorce lawyer, someone who could guide her through this process with professionalism and discretion. Step 3, take control. Emma would no longer be the betrayed wife, crying and begging for answers. She would be the woman who took charge, who used her intellect and resolve to navigate this mess with poise and precision. She stared at the screen for a long moment, her mind now calm. The emotional chaos had given way to clarity. She wasn't going to let Ryan's actions define her future. She would decide the next steps. She would write the next chapter of her life. And Ryan? He had no idea what was coming. The night of the company gala arrived with a buzz of excitement that Emma couldn't quite feel. The Fairmont Hotel was transformed into a glittering ballroom, filled with executives, clients, and colleagues all mingling under a canopy of sparkling chandeliers. The air smelled of expensive perfume, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifting through the room. It was a night meant for celebration, celebrating success, the company's achievements, the future ahead. Emma walked through the entrance with the grace of a woman who had mastered her space. She was wearing an emerald silk gown, its fabric flowing like water as it trailed behind her. Her hair was styled in a sleek updo, a few delicate strands framing her face. There was no hesitation in her step, no shaking of hands or looking over her shoulder. She had arrived, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally ready for the end of a chapter that had gone on far too long. As she entered the ballroom, her colleagues and the company's leadership turned to look. The whispers of congratulations were muffled, like background noise, as she caught sight of Ryan across the room. He was standing with Claire, the same Claire who had taken so much from her, the same woman who had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. They were standing too close, their faces lit with smiles too bright to be anything but intimate. It was the perfect setup, the public spectacle Emma had been waiting for. Ryan, ever the charming lawyer, was caught in the spotlight with his arm around Claire's waist, an image of what Emma's life had become without her even knowing it. She could feel the tears threatening to rise again, but she wouldn't allow them. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Not now. Not in front of everyone. A moment later, the music shifted, and the company's CEO took the stage to announce the evening's awards. Emma could hear her name mentioned among the leaders of the company as one of the top performers of the quarter. A round of applause erupted. She felt her chest tighten. This was the moment she had worked so hard for, the culmination of years of dedication. But despite everything she had accomplished, the focus wasn't on her success anymore. It was on what Ryan had done, and what she was about to do. She stood at the back of the room, watching Ryan and Claire as they exchanged whispers, their bodies leaning in just a little too close. That's when it hit her. This was the moment to let go, to reclaim everything she had lost. She had put this off long enough. Her heart didn't need to be shattered further, it was already broken. But it was time to end the game. She wasn't going to be the one left behind anymore. Emma's feet moved before her mind could fully catch up, walking across the floor toward the front of the room where the award ceremony was unfolding. The spotlight followed her as she approached Ryan and Claire, both of them frozen as they noticed her arrival. There was a moment of confusion in Ryan's eyes, but Emma didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her emotional turmoil. She had rehearsed this in her head 1,000 times, and now, it was happening. Ryan's eyes flickered with uncertainty as she stopped before him. Claire looked at her with a sly, almost smug expression that Emma could see was meant to provoke her. But Emma's gaze didn't waver. She stood taller, her shoulders squared, exuding a calm confidence that she hadn't felt in weeks. Ryan opened his mouth, but Emma cut him off, her voice steady and unyielding. "Ryan," she said, her voice carrying across the room, silencing the conversation that had been bubbling around them. "I think it's time we have a conversation about the future." Ryan blinked, confusion and disbelief flashing across his face. He didn't know what to expect, but he wasn't ready for this. Emma, composed and resolute, standing before him. He reached out, his hand almost instinctively, as if trying to smooth over the tension. But Emma wasn't done. She didn't flinch. "I think you know exactly what I mean," she continued, her voice low and calm, but piercing. "This has gone on long enough." With that, she pulled a small, sealed envelope from her clutch, holding it out to him. "These are the divorce papers, Ryan. I'm done." The room seemed to hold its breath, every eye locked on the unfolding scene. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting, no tears. Just Emma, holding out the papers that signaled the end of the marriage she had once worked so hard to build. The silence stretched, but Emma's composure remained. Ryan's face went pale as he stared at the envelope. His hand hovered in the air, but he didn't take it. He looked between Claire and Emma, and for the first time Emma saw a flicker of guilt, of realization, pass through his eyes. He wasn't ready for this. He thought he could walk away without consequence, but Emma wasn't the woman who would let him off the hook so easily. "I don't want anything from you anymore, Ryan," Emma said, her words slow and deliberate. "I just want to move forward. And I'm going to do that without you." There was no angry outburst, no dramatics, just a quiet, resolute finality in her words. Ryan stood there, frozen, unable to respond. And Emma knew, in that moment, that she had won. Not because she had outsmarted him, but because she had reclaimed herself. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the one walking away, head high, heart steady. The room had gone completely silent. Emma's gaze shifted to Claire, who was watching her with wide eyes. The smile on Claire's face faltered, and for the briefest moment, Emma saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. She had never expected this. She thought Emma would be broken, that she would crumble under the weight of betrayal. But Emma didn't crumble. She stood. Emma turned to the crowd, the noise of the gala slowly resuming, but in that moment, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The weight of the secret, of the betrayal, had been lifted. And what she felt wasn't anger, it was freedom. She walked away from Ryan and Claire without another word, her steps firm and purposeful. The applause from her colleagues was distant in her ears, but the pride she felt in herself was unmistakable. She had taken control. She had done what she needed to do to move forward. As she made her way toward the stage to accept her award, Emma glanced around the room. People were still whispering, but now they were whispering about her strength, not her weakness. She wasn't the woman standing in the shadows anymore. She was the woman who stood tall, who faced betrayal with grace and took control of her future. When she took the microphone to deliver her speech, Emma's voice rang out clear and strong. "I want to thank the company for this opportunity, for believing in me, and for giving me the space to grow. But I also want to say this, no matter what life throws at you, you are in control. Don't ever forget that." She paused, her eyes locking with Ryan's across the room. His face was ashen, the reality of his actions sinking in. Emma didn't feel sorry for him. She didn't feel anything for him anymore. She had moved on. And as she spoke those final words, her heart was light. She had survived. She had triumphed. And this was just the beginning. The weeks following the gala were nothing short of a transformation for Emma. The ripple effect of the divorce papers she had handed Ryan, the calmness with which she had confronted him, seemed to send shockwaves through her life. Word had spread fast, and what Emma had expected to be an emotional fallout from her colleagues turned into something completely unexpected: respect. They saw her not as a victim of betrayal, but as a woman who had taken control of her life and moved forward. At work, Emma's poise and unwavering focus only became more evident. She had been living a life of intense pressure and ambition, yes, but now, with the weight of the past lifted, she was free to fully immerse herself in the role she had worked so hard to attain. Her leadership style, once a blend of confidence and self-doubt, now exuded nothing but confidence. Her decisions were sharper, her vision clearer, and her ability to lead her team was stronger than ever. She could feel the shift within herself. The woman who had been broken just a few weeks ago was gone. In her place was someone who had weathered the storm of betrayal, and instead of letting it tear her apart, she had used it as the foundation for her next great leap. Emma's achievements in the months that followed were nothing short of remarkable. She spearheaded a major campaign that not only exceeded revenue targets but also cemented the company's reputation in the market. Her team flourished under her leadership, and she was invited to board meetings with the senior executives, her opinions now highly regarded. It wasn't just about the numbers, it was about the strength she exuded, the calm under pressure, the unshakable focus she had cultivated in the aftermath of her personal turmoil. Then, one morning, as Emma walked into the office, a little later than usual, a little more relaxed, she was met with an unexpected surprise. Her assistant, Ava, had a package waiting for her. "Congratulations, Emma," Ava said, handing her a small envelope. "The CEO has asked for you to join him in the conference room." Emma's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't uncommon for the CEO to meet with her, especially given her role in the recent campaign, but today felt different. She walked into the conference room, where the CEO, Mr. McAllister, sat at the head of the table, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a rare, warm smile. "Emma," he said, standing to shake her hand. "Please, sit. We've been watching your work closely over the last few months. You've gone through a lot, and yet, you've led this company to a whole new level of success. You've shown an incredible amount of resilience, and your focus is exactly what we need in leadership." Emma was taken aback. She had always been a hard worker, but she hadn't expected such a personal acknowledgement from him. "We've been discussing the future of this company," Mr. McAllister continued. "And we believe it's time for a change at the top. We'd like to offer you the role of Chief Marketing Officer." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The CMO position, the one she had dreamed of, the role she had worked tirelessly for, the position that would finally place her at the helm of the company's marketing strategy, was now within her grasp. I'm honored," Emma said, her voice steady, though inside, a wave of emotion surged. She had earned this. She had fought for this. And now, after everything she had gone through, she was about to take her career to the next level. Mr. McAllister smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "We're confident you'll do great things in this role, Emma. Your vision and drive are exactly what we need to continue growing as a company. And, personally, I want to say that I'm proud of how you've handled everything that's come your way. You've proven you're more than just a talented marketer, you're a true leader." Emma smiled, trying to keep the emotions in check. She hadn't realized until that moment just how much she had yearned for this validation. It wasn't just the promotion, it was the recognition of everything she had endured, everything she had overcome, and everything she was now capable of achieving. As she left the conference room, the weight of the last few months began to lift even more. Emma's personal life was still a work in progress, but she knew one thing for sure: she had taken control of her destiny. She had been through the fire, and now, like a phoenix, she was rising from the ashes. Over the next few months, Emma settled into her new role. Her influence in the company grew, and she found herself enjoying the freedom that came with leading at the highest level. She had the respect of her peers, and the admiration of those who worked under her. But perhaps most importantly, she had a sense of peace, a peace that had eluded her for so long. The days of constant worry about Ryan and his betrayal were behind her. She no longer needed his approval, nor did she crave his presence. Emma had become the woman she always wanted to be: strong, independent, and driven by a purpose that had nothing to do with anyone else's expectations. She had built her career, her life, from the ground up, and now, she was ready to build the next chapter on her own terms. One evening, as she sat in her new apartment, a sleek, minimalist space in a building overlooking the bay, Emma took a deep breath and looked out the window at the setting sun. The colors of the sky mirrored her transformation, once dark and stormy, now bathed in light and warmth. She had spent so many years trying to please others, trying to make a relationship work that wasn't meant to be, but now, she was living for herself. She picked up her phone and glanced at the time. It was still early, and she had an hour before her team meeting. She smiled softly to herself. Life was moving forward. Her life. Emma's final transformation wasn't about revenge, or about proving herself to anyone else. It was about finding her own power and redefining her life on her own terms. She had stepped into the fire and come out stronger, and now, she was ready for whatever the future held. No longer bound by the past, Emma had emerged victorious. The woman who had once been torn by betrayal now stood confidently at the top of her career, ready to conquer the world on her own. And this was just the beginning.
That's it for today's story on Life Reflections. I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or a story of your own. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe to keep the reflections coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.